Some works of art hold secrets so fascinating that you simply can't stop looking at them. Every time you return, you discover something new, something that pulls you in even deeper. The Arnolfini Portrait, painted by Jan van Eyck in 1434, is exactly that kind of painting. A work that seems to hide a mystery in every single inch of its surface. At first glance, it looks like an elegant portrait of a wealthy couple. But the moment you look closer, you realize something far more complex is going on. That's why many scholars consider it the most enigmatic painting in the entire history of art, one that, nearly 600 years later, still sparks heated debate among historians. For a long time, everyone was certain this was a wedding portrait, simple as that. But then certain details started to bother researchers. The woman's unusually voluminous dress, the little dog at the couple's feet, and, above all, those two mysterious figures reflected in the mirror at the back of the room. What are they doing there? These questions gave rise to some absolutely surprising theories that might completely change the way you see this painting. So let's get into it. First, the basics. We need to transport ourselves to 15th century Bruges, in what is now Belgium. Standing before us are two people who clearly belong to the top of society. Their clothing makes that impossible to miss. The woman is draped in a magnificent green dress, lined entirely with squirrel fur. Experts estimate that a garment like this would have required as many as 2,000 animal pelts. Just think about what that was worth at the time. The man wears an elegant velvet tabard trimmed with marten fur, another symbol of wealth and status reserved only for the most powerful. Their hands are joined. And notice something important. The man raises his right hand in a gesture that feels solemn, almost ritualistic, as if he's taking an oath. For centuries, nearly everyone agreed we are watching a marriage ceremony. A visual record of one of the most important moments in a couple's life. Then, in 1934, everything changed. Art historian Erwin Panofsky, one of the most influential scholars of all time, proposed something revolutionary. For him, this painting wasn't just a beautiful portrait. It was something far deeper and far bolder. A legal document. A painted marriage certificate. And the proof, Panofsky argued, was hidden in a detail most people walk right past. Look carefully at the back wall of the room. Right in the center of the composition, there is a carefully painted inscription. It reads, Johannes de Eyck fuit hic, 1434. In Latin, Jan van Eyck was here, 1434. Now pay close attention to this. In other works, Van Eyck typically signed his name discreetly, almost hidden, but not here. Here, the signature is prominent, woven directly into the scene itself, as if it were part of the moment being recorded. Why would he do that? Panofsky's answer was brilliant, because Van Eyck wasn't there merely as a painter, he was there as an official witness to the wedding. At the time, witnesses were legally essential to validate a union. By making that inscription so visible, Van Eyck was declaring to the world, I saw this, I was there, this happened. If this theory is correct, then we are looking at something truly unique in art history, a painting that is, at the same time, an aesthetic masterpiece and an official legal document. But the story gets even more intriguing when we turn our attention to another element in the composition. Just below the signature, there is a small circular mirror, extraordinary in its detail. It's a convex mirror, framed by 10 tiny painted medallions. Each one depicts a scene from the Passion of Christ, from his arrest to the crucifixion. That alone would be remarkable. But Van Eyck went further, much further. Inside the mirror, he painted the reflection of the entire room. And I mean the entire room. You can see the couple's backs, the window with its sledge of oranges, rare and expensive fruit at the time, the chandelier hanging from the ceiling, even the wooden ceiling beams. The precision is so staggering that experts believe Van Eyck must have used brushes with a single hair to achieve that level of detail. technical virtuosity at its absolute peak. But wait, there's more. If you look very carefully at the reflection in the mirror, you'll notice something intriguing near the doorway. Two additional figures, one dressed in blue, one in red. Who are they? For Panofsky, the answer was obvious. They are the other witnesses to the wedding, and one of them, he suggested, might be Van Eyck himself, inserting his own likeness into the scene in a subtle but unmistakable way. A self-portrait within a reflection within a portrait, layers upon layers of meaning. Not every historian agreed with that interpretation, though, and when researchers began investigating the real identity of the couple, things got even more complicated. Panofsky identified the man as Giovanni di Arrigo Arnolfini and his wife Giovanna Senami. It seemed to make sense the painting is known, after all, as the Arnolfini Portrait. But there was a problem. A serious one. Later research revealed that Giovanni di Arrigo didn't actually get married until 1447, 6 years after Van Eyck's death. You can't exactly paint someone's wedding before it happens. Unless Van Eyck had a time machine, that theory simply doesn't hold up. So historians went back to the archives and found another candidate, Giovanni di Niccolao Arnolfini, a cousin of Giovanni di Arrigo. This Giovanni was a wealthy cloth merchant from Lucca, Italy, who spent most of his life in Bruges. He had money, he had status, and he was in the city at exactly the right time. If it's really him in the painting, then several elements begin to make much more sense and also become far more unsettling. Take the chandelier, for instance. It's a magnificent bronze piece, painted with breathtaking richness of detail. Van Eyck captured every curve, every glint of light off the metal. At first glance, it looks like another symbol of luxury. But look more carefully. One candle is burning even though it's clearly daytime, and that candle is positioned directly above the man's head. For Panofsky, this symbolized the presence of God blessing the union, divine light illuminating the marriage. But on the other side of the chandelier, above the woman, there is another candle, and that one is extinguished. In the artistic tradition of the period, an unlit candle was a powerful symbol. It represented death, the passage of time, the fragility of human life, what scholars call memento mori, remember that you will die. This led some researchers to propose something shocking. What if the woman in the portrait was already dead when the painting was made? What if this isn't a wedding portrait at all, but a memorial portrait, a husband's tribute to a wife who left too soon? It's a dark interpretation, but the evidence begins to accumulate. In 2003, art historian Margaret Coster shook the academic debate to its core. She rejected Panofsky's wedding theory outright, calling it unlikely. Then she presented documentary evidence that changed everything. Coster discovered in historical archives that Giovanni di Niccolao Arnolfini's first wife was named Costanza Trenta and that she had died in 1433, just 1 year before the date inscribed on the painting. Worse still, all records indicate that Costanza died in childbirth. Suddenly, several elements of the work take on a completely different and far more heartbreaking meaning. Look at the wooden chair behind the woman. At the top of its post, there is a small carved figure, a woman standing over a dragon. Coster identified this as Saint Margaret, the patron saint of women in labor. According to legend, she was swallowed by a dragon and emerged miraculously unharmed. It was common to invoke her image as protection during pregnancy and childbirth. Why place that symbol there? And here we arrive at the question that continues to divide specialists today. Is the woman in the portrait pregnant? Coster is absolutely certain she is. Other historians disagree completely. The dress is indeed very voluminous around the abdomen. But is that evidence of pregnancy or simply the fashion of the wealthy in 15th century Flanders? Aristocratic women of the period wore long, heavily gathered gowns that deliberately created that kind of volume at the front. In fact, in another painting by Van Eyck, the Virgin Mary appears wearing an equally voluminous blue mantle, and she obviously isn't pregnant in that scene. And there's another angle worth considering. Giovanni di Niccolao was a cloth merchant. What better advertisement for the quality of his goods than the luxurious, abundant fabrics on his wife's body? But even if the dress is just fashion, the memorial portrait theory doesn't collapse. There's still more: the little dog at the couple's feet. Panofsky read it as a symbol of marital fidelity. Dogs were commonly used with that meaning in the art of the time. But Koster points to another tradition. In tombs and funerary monuments of the 15th century, it was common to place the figure of a dog at the feet of deceased women. The dog wasn't only a symbol of loyalty, it was also a spiritual guardian, meant to accompany the soul of the beloved into the afterlife. And then there's the mirror again. Those 10 medallions showing the Passion of Christ, they aren't arranged randomly. On the left side, scenes of Christ alive. On the right side, scenes of his suffering and death. And notice where each person in the couple is positioned. The man on the left aligned with life, the woman on the right aligned with death. Coincidence? Or one more thread in the elaborate symbolic web woven by Van Eyck? The truth is, we don't know, and perhaps we never will. And honestly, maybe that's exactly what makes this work so extraordinary. Jan van Eyck had a singular talent for layering meaning upon meaning inside scenes that appear, on the surface, completely natural and simple. Some historians find secret messages in every object, every shadow, every detail. Others are more skeptical. They think we're projecting significance that was never there. But regardless of which interpretation is correct, if a correct one even exists, none of that diminishes the hypnotic beauty of this painting. The mastery with which Van Eyck captured light, textures, reflections, the way he made a scene feel so alive, so present, that you feel like you could simply walk into that room. That is art at the highest level. Flawless technique in service of a deeply human vision. And the mystery? The mystery is still very much alive. Nearly 600 years later, it still fascinates us. It still pulls us back for one more look, trying to decipher what Van Eyck was really trying to tell us. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these theories makes the most sense to you? Do you think we're watching a wedding being celebrated or a melancholy tribute to a wife who was taken too soon? Is the woman pregnant, or is it just the fashion of the time? Did Van Eyck insert himself into the mirror's reflection as a witness, or is that just our imagination finding patterns? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the mysteries of art, don't forget to subscribe. There's a lot more fascinating history coming your way. See you in the next one.